The bell didn't just ring, it commanded. In a way, it sounded less like the cheerful chime of a classroom and more like the whistle of a factory shift. Long before adulthood, long before resumes and cover letters, children were already being drafted into the rhythm of obedience. An observer could see it clearly, tiny bodies standing in line, hands raised for permission to speak, eyes scanning for approval like workers waiting for the foreman's nod. This design was no accident. The very structure of modern schooling was modeled after the factories of the Industrial Revolution, a training ground to mass produce not dreamers but dependable laborers. The schedule, the bells, the standardized grading, they weren't tools for learning, they were tools for discipline. Psychologists would later call it the good student syndrome, children internalizing that safety comes from compliance, that mistakes are shameful, and that validation must always come from someone else's stamp of approval. The creative ones, the ones who dared to ask why, were labeled troublemakers. Ironically, they were the ones most prepared for a changing world. The obedient, the good kids, excelled in grades but often carried a hidden wound, the fear of being wrong, the inability to act without permission. Seen from above, it looked less like an education and more like a quiet rehearsal for corporate life. Desks in neat rows mirrored assembly lines. Gold stars foreshadowed performance reviews. Silence was rewarded, resistance punished. Childhood curiosity wasn't nurtured, it was negotiated away. And the question that lingers, unsettling and unresolved, is this: were they being educated or engineered? The spotlight hits, the names are called, and students shuffle across the stage in identical gowns, each clutching a diploma like it's a passport to freedom. Parents cheer, cameras flash, and for a brief moment it feels like victory. But an outside observer might notice something else. The celebration hides a quieter contract, one written in debt and expectation. Behind every cap tossed into the air is a ledger. In the United States, those smiling graduates collectively owe over $1.7 trillion in student loans, a sum so vast it rivals the GDP of entire nations. Globally, the pattern repeats. Young adults stepping into the world already shackled by obligations that stretch years, sometimes decades, ahead of them. What was sold as opportunity has become collateral. And the parents in the stands, they clap with pride, but also relief. They push for this path, this safe path, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. For many, a degree was the insurance policy they never had. Their children's stability became the project of their own unfinished dreams. But safety, in this context, is a cage with nicer curtains. Elsewhere, in the lecture halls of Norway or Sweden, the scene looks different. Students graduate with little to no debt, freer to take risks, to wander, to fail without being financially ruined. Some start bands, others backpack. A few launch small ventures that would be laughed at in American career centers. The absence of debt doesn't just change their bank accounts, it rewrites their imagination. So when the curtain closes on graduation day, the applause fades quickly. Those young adults, draped in caps and gowns, aren't simply entering the workforce. They're inheriting a system designed to keep them tethered. They don't just carry resumes and GPAs, they carry the weight of borrowed time. And the unsettling question lingers as the stage empties. If this was the safe road, why does it already feel like a trap? The new hire sits in a conference room, surrounded by laminated posters about company values no one actually follows. A trainer clicks through slides about KPIs, compliance, and workplace etiquette, speaking in acronyms like it's a secret language. It looks less like a welcome and more like an induction ceremony into a machine. Earlier that same morning, the rookie had stood in front of the mirror, adjusting a too stiff collar, rehearsing a smile, convincing themselves this was the first step toward adulthood. But by lunchtime, the illusion had cracked. No one asked about their ambitions, their creativity, or even their name for that matter. What mattered were the numbers, the deadlines, the metrics. Dreams had no place on the onboarding checklist. Sociologists call it imposter syndrome, but from the outside, it looks more like a ritualized hazing. bright young minds doubting their worth, while silently calculating how long they can survive without being found out. They hover over send buttons, terrified that a poorly worded email might expose them as frauds. They nod through meetings, pretending to understand strategies written in corporate jargon that says everything and nothing at once. Meanwhile, entire industries thrive on this cycle of exploitation. Internships without pay, probation periods with wages so low they barely cover bus fare, exposure packaged as currency. It's not training, it's extraction, siphoning the energy of the young while branding it as experience. And yet, from the outside, it still looks like progress. The badge, the desk, the first paycheck. But beneath the surface, the truth is colder. This isn't the beginning of a career. It's the beginning of a bargain, time, health, and freedom, traded for the privilege of sitting under fluorescent lights. The rookie doesn't know it yet, but today isn't about stepping into the future. It's about stepping onto the treadmill that tomorrow, and every tomorrow after, will keep running. And so begins the rhythm of the 9 to 5, where the illusion of choice fades into the choreography of survival. It begins on Sunday evening, not Monday morning. Across countless homes, the air thickens with an invisible weight, what psychologists call Sunday dread. Cortisol rises, serotonin dips, and the weekend's brief illusion of freedom evaporates before the week even starts. By dawn, the collective sigh of the workforce fills subway cars and highways, a silent choir rehearsing the same lament. Monday again. Inside the office, the theater begins. Research shows that the average employee produces only about 3 hours of truly focused work a day. The rest is choreography, replying to emails that shouldn't exist, sitting through meetings that solve nothing, perfecting the art of looking busy when the boss walks by. It isn't productivity, it's performance, a masquerade that consumes most of a lifetime. The toll is universal, though it wears different uniforms. Manual laborers collapse from the exhaustion of the body. White-collar workers unravel from the exhaustion of the mind. 2 paths, 1 destination: depletion. On a global stage, the consequences turn deadly. In Japan, there's a word for it: karoshi, death by overwork. In South Korea, the workday routinely swallows the night, a culture where leaving before your manager is seen as disloyalty. And in Western offices, the glow of Slack notifications replaces neon streetlights. But the story is the same. Lives parceled into tasks, souls slowly starved. From the outside, the rhythm appears orderly. Emails sent, projects tracked, calendars filled. But from within, it feels like time itself has been hijacked. Days drag, weekends vanish, and years blur into a carousel spinning too fast to step off. And the cruelest irony? They call it stability. Yet what kind of stability devours your hours and returns them to you empty? Which leads to the next chapter. The promotion, the raise, the so-called success that promises relief, but demands an even steeper cost. The office claps. Balloons float in the break room. Someone slices a cake under fluorescent lights, congratulating the newly promoted manager. From the outside, it looks like triumph. From the inside, it feels like another rerun of the same show, only now with a bigger title on the door. Psychologists call it the hedonic treadmill, the brief rush of happiness after each promotion, followed by the same emptiness as before. Yesterday's victory becomes today's baseline, and the chase resumes, 1 rung higher, 1 layer heavier. But the treadmill isn't just internal, it's external too. The newly promoted are constantly measured against the next generation. Younger, faster, fluent in the latest tools, armed with certifications and hashtags. Meanwhile, the veterans carry Advil in their desk drawers and a permanent tension in their shoulders. Comparison isn't just demoralizing, it's institutionalized. For women, the climb comes with an added cruelty, the double standard. Be gentle, and you're dismissed as ineffective. Be firm, and you're branded difficult. The tightrope is invisible, but it cuts sharper than glass, forcing them to perform balance acts no promotion ever compensates for. The data backs the feeling. Studies show that burnout rates are higher among managers than employees. The corner office doesn't buy freedom, it buys longer hours, higher stakes, and quieter loneliness. The higher the climb, the colder the air. And so the illusion fractures. Promotion was supposed to be the escape hatch, the reward for endurance. Instead, it reveals itself as a more polished cage, one floor up in the same tower. What follows is not glory, but the hidden wounds, burnout that leaves no scars on the skin but etches itself deep inside the mind. It doesn't always end with a resignation letter. Sometimes it ends with a body trembling in a bathroom stall after a meeting, or a manager who simply stops showing up one Monday and never comes back. From the outside, it looks abrupt. From the inside, it's been building for years. The World Health Organization has a clinical term for it: burnout, defined by 3 markers: emotional exhaustion, reduced performance, and a hollowed sense of disconnection. But strip away the sterile language and it becomes something far messier, a slow bleed of the self. Case studies are everywhere, though rarely spoken aloud. Employees suddenly collapsing into medical leave. High performers quietly enrolling in therapy. Workers whose bodies revolt with panic attacks, insomnia, or chest pains that mimic heart disease. Research makes the link clear. Prolonged workplace stress raises the risks of cardiovascular illness, depression, and chronic sleep disruption. What the office calls just a rough quarter, the body records as trauma. And yet, inside the workplace, a different script is enforced. Toxic positivity demands a smile in every meeting, a chirpy "I'm fine" in every hallway. Complaints are weakness, exhaustion is rebranded as dedication. The culture doesn't heal pain, it silences it, varnishing despair with corporate cheer. Seen from above, burnout doesn't explode. It erodes. Eyes dull, shoulders cave, voices fade. People shrink without vanishing, until one day they do, and when they disappear, the system barely notices. The next resume is already waiting. The cruel irony? Burnout leaves no scars for others to see. It doesn't scream. It whispers, quietly enough that most mistake it for normal. And that whisper leads to the next chapter. The promise of freedom through retirement, a promise that, for many, arrives too late to heal what was lost. The last day comes with cake in the break room and a card signed in blue ink. Colleagues clap, someone makes a short speech, and the retiree walks out with a box of belongings, decorations for a desk that now belongs to someone else. It looks like closure, it feels like freedom, but a closer lens tells another story. Statistically, the average retirement age hovers around 62 to 65, while life expectancy stretches only a decade or so beyond that. By the time many step into retirement, their bodies are already faltering. The trips once imagined are shelved because knees ache, blood pressure spikes, or fatigue steals the day before it begins. The prize arrives, but the energy to enjoy it has expired. Psychologists warn of post-retirement depression, a hollowing of purpose once the calendar clears. After decades of equating worth with productivity, silence becomes unbearable. The habit of constant busyness lingers like a phantom limb, and rest feels less like a gift than a guilt. Family, too, reveals its cruel timing. The children are grown, carving their own lives elsewhere. Parents who once waited for visits are now gone. The hours once sacrificed cannot be reclaimed. The faces once missed are now memories. Freedom arrives, but there is no one left to share it with. Meanwhile, in contrast, some choose a different path. FIRE. Financial independence, retire early. Retiring in their 30s or 40s, they claim decades of life back, defying the script of waiting until old age to live. Their choice raises an uncomfortable question for those who work to 65. Was the so-called safe path ever safe at all, or just a longer, slower form of sacrifice? So the office doors close behind them, and the world calls it freedom. But from the outside, it looks more like an overdue gift, handed out when time and vitality have already slipped away. And that's the cost. The dream of freedom delivered too late, leading only to the final reckoning. Was any of it worth it? The cameras flash, the applause rings out, the speech about success wraps neatly with a handshake. It looks like the ending of a story, the triumphant arc of hard work rewarded. But step back, and the applause begins to sound hollow. What, after all, does success even mean? A title, a salary, a corner office, or the years carved away to earn them? Philosophers might call it a false idol. Psychologists might call it hedonic adaptation. But the reality is simpler. If success leaves you depleted, estranged, and numb, was it ever success, or just failure dressed in business casual? The 21st century exposes the cracks in the old model. The 9 to 5 routine was built for factories, not fiber optics. Offices were designed for typewriters, not cloud servers. In an era of AI, remote work, and the gig economy, clinging to the industrial age blueprint feels less like tradition and more like denial. And yet, new paths flicker at the edges. Omaji, work-life balance not as a slogan, but as survival. Freelancing or small ventures, trading stability for sovereignty. San 4-day work weeks, already tested in parts of the world, proving productivity doesn't have to be chained to exhaustion. From a distance, the lesson is stark. Work doesn't just consume your hours, it shapes you, sanding down curiosity, molding compliance, rewarding silence. Unless questioned, it repeats. One generation after another, caught in the same loop. So perhaps the final question isn't how do you succeed, but something heavier, something harder to escape. What is success worth if the price is your life? And the silence after that question may be the loudest part of all.